Hi and welcome. My name is Lauren Willette. I am the Folk Arts Survey Coordinator for Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts. AFTA is a statewide public folklore program housed in the special collections at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And we have three mainstay programs: this web series, our community scholars trainings, and our apprenticeship program. For more information, please visit folklife.uark.edu. And there's a link for that in the chat, along with a page about the outdoor skills program that Eric Maynard is in charge of. And he serves as the chief of education with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, where he's been working since 1999 when he was hired as the first director of the Delta Rivers Nature Center. He currently leads the commission's education division and is in charge of their outdoor skills series. That series offers training in fishing, hunting, calling, trapping, and related skills. And today we'll talk about his background with outdoor skills and about hunting and fishing traditions in Arkansas and more. And again, the link to both of those mentioned pages is in the chat. Thank you so much for being with me here with us today, Eric. I'm really excited to talk to you about hunting and fishing and all those sorts of things. So I wanted to start just with getting a little information about your background with outdoor skills. Like, when did you start getting interested in hunting and fishing, and who introduced you to those traditions?
Well, I don't remember when I started being interested in outdoors. It was just always there, I guess. Lucky enough in some ways to have grown up far enough back that we didn't have as many TV options and screen options and that kind of stuff. So we played outside more. So always was outside. I grew up in Stuttgart and had lots of hunting opportunities around there. I can remember when I was young and we used to play. We lived on the edge of town, and myself, my brother, the neighbor kids, we'd go out and play in a ditch that ran around the edge of town. And they always told us it was a sewer ditch. I think they were trying to tell us that to keep us out of the ditch playing. But that wasn't it. It was just a drainage. And we caught crawdads and caught little fish and just played in the water and all that kind of stuff all the time. But there was always opportunities to hunt, and it was around, especially during the fall and winter of the year when the ducks and the geese came in. There just wasn't any way not to notice all the wildlife activity around. So I was always interested in animals and plants and the outdoors. I loved reading about them, watching National Geographic and Mutual of Omaha's wild animals growing up and all that kind of stuff. And so I got to be that person when there was an injured hawk or a baby bird fell out or somebody found a baby rabbit. They came to me to either take care of it or figure out what to do, and all those kind of things. So that kind of helped lead into my current position. But with hunting, I was lucky. I had two people that really mentored me and got me into hunting, I guess, in two different ways. One was my father, and one was an uncle. And my dad, growing up, did not hunt. I mean, his family just didn't hunt. My grandfather fished some, but Dad was in the banking business, and in Stuttgart, duck hunting was part of the culture. And, it's also a very social activity. And a lot of times you think about bankers and business people, they go play golf, and they do that some in Stuttgart too. But a lot of times this time of year in the fall and winter time, you take them duck hunting. So he got to go duck hunting and got to go to some nice clubs and different places. So when I got old enough, he could take me along with him. So I got to go to some nice hunting clubs growing up. But then I also had an uncle that was a guide, was a farmer, and had his own land and would take me hunting. He married into the family and kind of took me under his wing, and we duck hunted. He taught me how to go raccoon hunting at night, all kinds of things. So he took me deer hunting. Um, so I had those two people. I had one that grew up out in the country and hunted all his life, and then one that didn't and did it for a different reason. But I got exposed to two different aspects of hunting from two different angles. Um, but both of them influenced me and taught me to love the outdoors and the hunting tradition.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I want to know so can you just talk just a little bit about duck hunting? And I'm asking you a question I didn't prepare. I just thought of it.
Yeah.
But just a little bit about duck hunting in Stuttgart, because I know it's just such a big part of the culture there. And as I grew up in the Ozarks and was around hunters and fishermen and things like that, but nobody hunted ducks. And so I just would like to hear just a little bit more.
You know, it's so different than deer hunting. And when I talk to people and they start talking about hunting, oh yeah, I love to hunt and all this kind of stuff, and they're getting ready for hunting season, I always think, which kind of hunting are we talking about? Because a lot of people are just deer hunters. That's what they think about all year long. Deer's first day of deer season. Some places, school got out on the first day of deer season and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I've had people in the fall say, "Oh yeah, getting ready for hunting season, be here, next week or so." And I think, no, not for me. It's a few more weeks. There's no ducks here yet. I mean, I do deer hunt occasionally, but I'm not a hard and fast deer hunter. But so duck hunting, one of the great things about it is it's a social event. I mean, you're in a blind with maybe one or two of your buddies. You might be 7 or 8 people all in one blind or spread out through the woods hunting together. So there's a different aspect to it maybe than, say, deer hunting, where you're alone in most cases out in the woods, which is really good also. I mean, sometimes you need to get away from people. But with the duck hunting part, it's a little more active. So if it's slow at times, you've got people to talk to, you're blowing your duck call, you're up looking around, you can move, you're setting out decoys and that kind of thing. And then if the hunting's good, then you're being quiet and you're calling and shooting, and hopefully, whereas if you're deer hunting, you're out there enjoying the peace and quiet. I mean, you may be up in a tree stand by yourself. You'll hear every little sound. Your nerves kind of get on in when you start hearing a branch break or something going through the leaves. If you hunt like me, if you're deer hunter, then 9 times out of 10 that's a squirrel or an armadillo or something like that, and not a deer. But it sure gets your blood pumping. But the duck hunting, yeah, it is truly a culture and not just in Arkansas, in East Arkansas, but in lots of places across the United States. It just depends. Like, it's not up in the Ozarks because it's not duck habitat. I mean, they have a few places, and I talk to people that duck hunt a little bit up there on ponds and stuff, but it's kind of a novelty in some cases. Whereas first day of duck season in Stuttgart, the whole world turns camouflage. Everybody's up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The gas stations are up. People are, serving breakfast at restaurants at 4 in the morning. I mean, life changes during duck season.
Yeah, that sounds pretty neat. I'm gonna have to visit Stuttgart during duck season just to go have breakfast real early and see what the hunters are talking about. So how did you get started with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission?
A little by luck. I mean, you have to have some experience. I have a degree in wildlife conservation. but I can remember as young as probably 16, I wanted to work for the Game and Fish Commission. Um, at 16, I knew who the director was. Uh, I read the magazines. I thought that's the way I wanted to go. I ended up getting my degree in wildlife. Um, at the time, you heard there weren't very many jobs, or you had to be a wildlife biologist, or you had to be a game warden. But things have progressed, and those, not that those are bad jobs, um, just didn't give a whole lot of opportunity. There's only so many slots for so many people out there. Now, we're lucky in Arkansas, we now have the conservation sales tax, and that funds a lot of our education and our public lands. It helped hire more game wardens and that kind of thing. So I actually worked at the Little Rock Zoo and the Friends of the Zoo. I started off as a volunteer. Really promote volunteering. It'll help get your foot in the door, get you some experience places. And so I started off as a volunteer. I ended up being hired there. And then when Game and Fish decided to build a nature center, I had the experience with the wildlife background and the experience running a gift shop and doing educational programs on site and off site at schools and working with the public and those kind of things. So luckily for me, it was just a good fit.
Yeah, it sounds like. Okay, so now I want to move more into, hunting and fishing traditions and things like that. So and of course these are just your opinion. I'm not like, but so why do you feel like people hunt and fish, and why are they, why are they keeping those traditions today?
Well, different reasons. Um, in some cases, and I'm going to use Stuttgart again, although this applies lots of places, it's just a natural progression. I mean, some families hunt, whether they hunt commercially, they're guides and they're making a living that way. They're hunting for food to fill their freezers to last them the rest of the year. Or they hunt just because that's their excuse to get outside. Some days we just need an excuse. So they take their kids, they take their friends, and it's just a natural progression. But I also see people now who don't come from those backgrounds, and they're trying to get into hunting because they want their kids to be outdoors more. They want to know more about hunting and what it involves, and it gives them a reason to be outdoors. Um, there is a big push for kind of knowing where your food comes from, and having locally produced food, venison, duck, goose, squirrel, rabbit, all that kind of stuff, is kind of coming back to some people. They're very interested in this kind of locavore movement and growing their own food, harvesting their own food. Um, Foraging is coming on, so it all kind of ties together. It's getting back to nature and knowing where our food and stuff's coming from also.
Yeah. Um, that's yeah, that's so cool. I Yeah, I was about to go on a tangent about foraging, but I'll stop myself. Because that's not what we need to do. It's not that kind of conversation. What are some of the more common hunting and fishing traditions that you see in Arkansas?
Oh, traditions. Gosh, that kind of, it's like saying what's your tradition at Christmas? Everybody has different traditions in some ways, but um, you know, eh, speaking of Christmas, there are a lot of families that get together and hunt at the holidays. It's part of that kind of tradition. I may not be what you were referring to, but it's one of the few times some of those families will get together. People have moved out of state or they're spread out across the state, and they come back together. And one of the things they like to do is to go hunt. Um, First day of deer season and going to deer camp, is a big tradition for people. And if you listen to them, they get excited about going hunting. They get excited about going to deer camp. And some of them go 2 or 3 weeks early and they're preparing deer camp and all this kind of stuff, getting ready. And there's always that hope with deer hunting, the dream of killing the big buck. Um, but that's part of it. It's really now, and I compared duck hunting and deer hunting a lot. So if you go deer hunting, you can be successful and harvest some game and have meat. Then there's those people who happen to kill a big buck and that sticks in their memory and they show it off to people and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're a duck hunter, ducks don't get supersized. They don't grow antlers. I mean, you can harvest mallards, you can harvest pintails and widgeon and all kinds of stuff. So you might get a mixed bag. But when you listen to people talk about hunting and what they've done in the past and their memories and stuff, very rarely is it about what they harvested. It's more about the experience. They went with their friends, they went with their family, or it was really cold, or it rained on them, or, of course, if you ever dealt with fishermen, the stories get better and better. My fish started off this big, in 2 years, it's this big. And hunters are kind of the same way, about how terrible the weather was. It was freezing and I was hunting in the sleet and we had to bust ice that was 3 inches thick, and stories get bad. But that's part of the fun too. But so it's about that experience. And that's why people like to go back. It's not so, I mean, yes, hunters want to harvest something. They don't want to come out and say, no, I didn't do any good all season. But the reason they keep going back is they love to be outdoors, have that experience, and then come back and tell other folks about it.
Yeah. So are the most common, what are the most common animals that are hunted for? And then what are the more rare animals that are hunted for in the state?
So besides ducks and say waterfowl in general, ducks and geese, and deer are all very common. Squirrels are still very common. They don't get as much attention because they just don't. They don't. Same thing. They don't grow big antlers. They're not a commercial animal. It's bringing in people from out of state, generating a lot of money and stuff. But it's a great way to get people started hunting. Great for beginners and stuff. So those are common. The less common things would be elk and alligators and bears. So there are open seasons on those, but they're highly regulated. So most those are all on a quota system. So with deer, for example, you can buy a license and it allows you to take 1 deer, or you can buy a different license and allows you to take up to 6 deer. And it doesn't matter if you harvest all those or not. Whereas if you get drawn for an alligator permit, they only issue so many of them. And I don't remember what the number is this past year, but let's say it was 80 or 100 or something like that. So they issue 100 permits and they may not harvest all of them. So there may be some that don't get harvested, but no matter what, they're not going to harvest more than that. With the bear harvest, there's also a quota, but you don't have a permit like the alligator. So every morning you have to call. There's a set season that you can hunt in, but every morning you'd call and check. And if the quota has been met, then the season's closed. And if the quota has not been met, then you can go bear hunt one more day and see. And then again, if you want to bear hunt again tomorrow, then you have to again check and see if the quota is met. So it's very kind of tightly regulated. So those are not nearly as common. Not everybody has the opportunity to, or a location they can hunt bears. Not very many people get drawn for elk or alligators. And then you have other game species that are just not very common. So you can hunt snipe and gallinules and coots and things. And just very few people do it. There's a season for them. If you're out there maybe duck hunting and you come across something else, you can harvest some of those things. I tell people all the time there's a snipe season, and they think it's a myth. They've heard stories about snipe huntings where you give somebody a bag and you send them out in the woods and all this kind of stuff, but there's actually a real bird called a snipe, and there is a season on snipe.
Interesting. What about turkey hunting? Is that
Turkeys are common.
yeah,
Turkey hunters are common. Turkey hunters will tell you the turkeys are not as common as they'd like them to be.
yeah.
But the population has come back up some, and we're doing lots of habitat work for turkey. So yeah, there's with turkey hunting, very few people are part way in. You're either not a turkey hunter or you seem to be obsessed with turkey hunting. There's not very much gray area in there, and everybody, and I'm not a turkey hunter, and people keep trying to take me and go like, you need to be a turkey hunter, you'll love it. And it's like, I don't need one more obsession to take up time. I mean, it's a great reason to get out in the springtime and enjoy the weather and again, it's about that experience. When you talk about to those turkey hunters, it's not about pulling the trigger because you can only kill 1 or 2 turkeys. It is about being out there and calling that turkey and then hearing it call back to you, and you are actually interacting with that animal and trying to talk to it and get it to perform its natural instinct and come to you if you're any good. And so you have to become a turkey. So yeah, there's a lot of turkey hunters. Also quail. We used to have a lot of quail, and just through habitat problems and stuff, the quail population has gone down. Again, we're working on trying to improve habitat with private landowners, and you don't just work on quail habitat. You work on good habitat, and then you'll have quail, and you'll have turkeys, and you'll have songbirds, and you'll have butterflies and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. So could you explain why, like what's the purpose of having these regulations and quotas? What does that do for our wildlife?
So it's all about proper management. Early on, let's talk about bears. That's a great example in Arkansas. 300 years ago, Arkansas was known for its bears. Early on, when Arkansas first became a state, we were called the bear state because we had so many bears, but we didn't have bear hunting regulations. So people would come from all over the world to hunt bears in Arkansas because they were so abundant. But that meant you could harvest whatever you wanted, as many as you wanted. And then as more people came in, you got into market hunting. So if you're a good hunter at that time, and there's these people moving in and they're doing other things, you're providing them food. So, and you're making money. And with bears, it was meat, it was hides, it was the fat to render oil for lamps. So you'd go out and harvest as much as you could to make as much money as you could. And at one point, it's estimated that the bear population in Arkansas got down to about 25 bears total. They were in the White River bottoms. And that was about the time we started having regulations, and we closed seasons. We made it illegal to harvest certain animals. And through proper management, proper habitat work, we did bring in some bears from other states to replenish some areas. So now the population is back up about, I think it's about 6,000 or so bears. So we went from 25 to 6,000, but before that 25, we had thousands also.
Right.
So that's where those regulations come in. There is what we call a carrying capacity. There's only so many living creatures you can put in a certain area, whether that's people, bears, deer, whatever. There's only so much food and space, and they will naturally expand their population and grow to that point and then beyond. So the natural cycle is, if nobody else is messing with it, they would have more deer than we would have carrying capacity for. They would start to die off. Predators would take out the weaker ones. If there wasn't enough food, some of them do starve and things like that in the wintertime. And the stronger ones survive, and it makes the entire population better as a whole. So now we've changed habitats through people moving in, and we've taken out a lot of the predators. And we have fertilized our yards, and we grow crops. So we have all this abundant food at certain times of the year. So the population can really take off, almost too much in some cases. So without those predators, or if we just want to let them go through the natural cycle and have a die off, that's kind of what would happen. So hunting helps level that out. That's why you'll see these different regulations. And some people are like, well, why can we take, this many animals here? Or one time you can only take 3 deer in this area, but you can take 5 in this area. Well, it's because of the population levels. And in some areas you go to, you have to harvest a doe before you can harvest a buck, because a lot of the deer hunters are out there looking for a big buck with big antlers and all that kind of stuff. But that gets the population, the sex ratio out of whack. So we kind of have to force people to take a doe before they take a buck in some areas. So it all goes back to that proper management. And if you look at it, deer hunters, for example, in Arkansas, usually harvest about 20% of the population. And that's not enough to cause any detriment. They bounce back every year. Now, if there weren't any regulations and we were taking out 50% of the population, they wouldn't bounce back that same level. Then if the next year people took out 50% or more, then you start to dwindle it down. So that's why we have these regulations, so that we can continue the hunting tradition again. So those animals will always be here and have a habitat.
Right. Yeah. It looks like we have a question in chat. I'm going to just go ahead and read it rather than wait until the end. It says, my grandfather retired from the game and fish in the 70s, and he often talked about getting deer off the deer refuge in Howard County and relocating them to different parts of the state to help with repopulation. Are there any books or papers on the efforts of the Arkansas Game and Fish and the species they have successfully managed in Arkansas?
There is a book called Arkansas Wildlife, I believe is the title. Mammals. And I thought I had one here close. Looking at my bookshelf, that's why I'm leaning over here. Arkansas mammals. And I don't have it here in front of me. But there is a book on Arkansas wildlife that has the history of game and fish and some of that repopulation efforts, and has good pictures of them releasing deer out of big crates in the back of game wardens' trucks and biologist trucks. Talks about some of the deer that were brought in from other areas, setting up the wildlife management area system. That gives, early on, that land set aside gave a safe place for those deer populations to grow, and then they would naturally spill out of that because there's no fences and stuff. But there would have been times where they would have relocated animals. And with deer, it may have been a short distance across the state, or it could have been like the elk that were brought in from the Rocky Mountain areas, or some of the bears that came from Minnesota and Wisconsin. So the bears will travel, but they only travel, seems, in certain regions. So if you harvest a bear in the Ozark or Ouachita Mountains, those are actually descendants from northern bears, And if you harvest a bear, for example, over in East Arkansas or Southeast Arkansas, those are some of that 25 that were native to Arkansas. So you can have southern bears or northern bears, but they've been here a long time now. But that's the book I would look for.
Okay, so is it by the Game and Fish Commission, Keith Sutton and Carol Griffey? Does that sound familiar?
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay, I found it and I'll put a link to it.
And Keith Sutton was the editor of the Arkansas Game and Fish magazine for years, and still writes a lot of articles and stuff. So you still see his name around.
Okay, so there's a link in the chat to that now. And okay, sorry, I had to get back to my questions. So how are hunting and fishing traditions, how are they typically passed down, and what are the types of lessons that somebody would learn?
Well, a lot of it is through family. Sometimes, you're lucky enough to have friends if your family doesn't hunt, but you learn, where do you start? All kinds of things just by being outdoors. So if you're deer hunting, you're learning about how animals move at different times of the day, at different times of the month, because of the moon and those kind of patterns. You learn to look for signs such as tracks and deer scat and rubs on branches on the ground and scrapes on small trees where they're rubbing the velvet off their antlers. So you really learn observation. If you're deer hunting and you're sitting up in a stand for 2 or 3 hours, and I know for some people that would sound just boring you're sitting in a tree for 3 hours, but you learn to pay so close attention to every bird singing, to every squirrel moving on the branches, to every acorn that drops out of the tree and hits the leaves, to, like I said, every armadillo that walks by under your stand. I hear more people talk about seeing bobcats, while they're out deer hunting and stuff. Well, very few people do you talk to otherwise. Maybe they saw a bobcat crossing the road, but you kind of have to be out there. So, if you're duck hunting, you are learning to pay attention to which way is east and the sun's coming up, in case it's shining on your face. Which way is the wind blowing, so you know where to set your decoys, because the ducks are going to come into the wind, and you learn about how they come into the wind to light and to take off, and how to set your decoys so they look like a natural group of ducks. How are they too close? Are they too spread out? Are they in the wrong position? Those kind of things. So you're learning about animal behavior. You're learning to pay attention. You're learning to use your senses. You think about being in a duck blind and you're trying to keep your head down so you're not looking up and the sun shining on you, and you see these little black specks in the sky flying by, and with enough experience, you'll know those little black specks are mallards, or they're green-winged teal, or they're pintails, by the way they're flying, the way their wings are beating, the way that slight differences in the shape and stuff. It's all about just being out there, doing it over and over, and then being with somebody that can help teach you. You're learning to duck call. You may learn to rattle up bucks. You may take that next step if you're deer hunting. You meet somebody else that teaches you about bow hunting. So maybe you harvested deer and you're in a good place. Maybe it's not as big a challenge to you anymore. And some people want to take that next step. It's not about filling their tags and harvesting animals. Now it's about, how did I do it? And it's about that natural progression. We teach that through Hunter Ed. You take people out the first time and their goal is to kill something. They want to shoot a duck, they want to shoot a deer, whatever. You want to take something home. But eventually you get past that as somebody keeps taking you and you're working with you, and then it's that next step. Now I'm going to bow hunt. Now I can't shoot a deer at 200 yards if I was a good rifle shot. Now I've got to get that deer within 30 or 40 yards at most. And I got to practice a lot. Or I'm going to learn, like with the turkey hunting. Now I'm going to learn to call that turkey and work with it and talk back and forth. And you may do that in a season, and it may take you 5 or 6 years to learn to talk turkey where they talk back.
Right.
So, that tradition is set by, and learning stuff by doing it over and over and having somebody guide you. A lot of times these days we use the term a mentor. And we work really hard at trying to find mentors now to take people hunting, because there is that interest and it's coming back around, and people have had a disconnect. A lot of people have gotten away from it. And some folks are wanting to come back, but you got to have that somebody to take you by the hand. And unless you're a real go-getter and you can learn stuff watching YouTube and talking to people, and then you're going to go out there all by yourself, that can be a little bit intimidating sometimes to think I'm going to go out in the woods in an area I don't really know. Maybe I'm going to shoot a deer, and then what am I going to do with it? Maybe I got lucky and I killed this deer. Now the second, that's where the work starts. Now what am I going to do? I've killed this deer, or somebody's taken me and I've killed 3 or 4 ducks. What am I going to do with them? So that's where that mentor comes in, and they're going to teach you how to process your game and package it up so you can take it home, and teach you how to cook it. Some people may say, oh yeah, I'd love to have wild game. Even if you handed it to them on a silver platter, they wouldn't know how to cook it. And it is a little different. So I got off away from your question there, but
no, you didn't. That's fine. I wonder, because you've mentioned, bow and arrow and calls and things like that. What about, are people making these items? Is that part of this tradition also?
Yeah, people tend to find something they're really interested in, and they get really absorbed in it. And one thing, like we talked about, the first step is that person wants to go out and they just want to harvest something. And then maybe as they progress, it's more about, maybe now I want to bow hunt, for example. But you can go to the store and buy a modern bow, and they'll set it up for you and measure you and make it fit you, and they'll give you lessons, and you go home and practice. But then there's those people who continue on, and maybe they want to not use a compound bow and they want to use a primitive bow. And then they think, okay, maybe I could make my own bow. Or if you're a duck hunter for years and years, decades, people made their own decoys. Now, if you want decoys, you go to the store and you buy a dozen or 2 dozen or whatever plastic decoys. Same thing with your duck call. You can go buy one mass produced, or you can buy one from some people who are making them, or you can learn yourself to make a duck call. And it's much more rewarding to those people, especially if they've been hunting for a few years. I hate to say it gets routine. I never get tired of going out and watching the ducks fly and the sunrise, being outside. But at some point you might think, how can I challenge myself? What would make this a little better? Well, what if I hunted over decoys that I made, or I used a duck call that I made? So I've actually got a couple here. I've got a few decoys you may see in the background. So I've got one here. You can see this. So this is a bluebill. This is not a real common duck. I mean, we have them in Arkansas. They're usually found in deep water. This one is actually from the East Coast. This decoy is, and it's about 100 years old. There are still people that carve decoys. A lot of them carve them to hunt with, but nowadays a lot of people buy them for decoration. But I still talk to people all the time that carve their own decoys, they hunt over them, and it means so much more to them. Along with that, we've got people who make duck calls. Somebody figured out years and years ago, you could put a reed of some kind into a wooden tube and blow on it, and with enough adjustment, it would quack like a duck. And there was a man named Chick Majors in the Stuttgart area, and he made calls. This one I think was made back in the late 70s. He's well known, and he inspired lots of other people to make duck calls also. And I've got one from a guy, Mike Lewis, in Whitehall, and he made this call probably 10 years ago. Himself, he's a duck call collector because he likes that part of the history. Decoys are not a big thing in Arkansas. All the decoys came from out of state. Down in Mississippi, they produced a lot of them. We didn't really have decoy makers in Arkansas, but we had duck call makers. So there's a lot of Arkansas duck calls, and he's got a great collection, and he made his own. And for a comparison, well, now this one is this is an African wood, blackwood of some kind. And this one, even though it may seem newer, this is an acrylic duck call. This one's probably 40 years old. Again, made by somebody who was a duck guide. Billy Starks in the Stuttgart area made this rebel duck call, and it has progressed. Nowadays, you can go to the store, you can buy plastic calls that are injection molded, and they work, but it's not quite the same maybe as one that was turned on a lathe by somebody you've met, and they hand tuned it and passed it on to you. So people do a lot of that stuff. I've got a bow. You don't know what a long bow is. Hard to show on this screen, but so this is bodark wood. A lot of us know bodark or Osage orange. So bodark is a French word that means wood of bows. And this was the tree or the type of wood preferred by Native Americans to make their bow, because the grain's real straight, it's really strong, but it's also flexible. So they would make these bows hand carved out of bodark and hunt with them. And then the other end of that is you had to make an arrow. So you made an arrow shaft, and you had to nap or cut out flint knap an arrowhead. Most of us have seen arrowheads. And a friend of mine who also makes bows like that one does flint napping. So he's made this knife out of obsidian. It's been flint napped. And same way they make arrowheads. So he can use this to skin out his harvest and that kind of stuff. It's even made with the part of an alligator jaw. And the sinew is natural sinew that he took off probably a deer to make this knife. So yeah, these people get into all these other aspects of it and continue on these traditions, and they love to share with other people. They like to show people how to flint knap or how to make duck calls. I had a gentleman I worked with when I was 16, and he taught me how to make duck calls and turn wood on a lathe and put the soundboard in there and adjust it and all that kind of stuff. I met a guy in Wynn a year or so ago, and we got to talking, and he's 75 or so years old, and he's been making fishing lures for years, and not commercially. He makes them himself for fun. He gives them to people. He gave me a couple of them for my son and I to use and go fish. And yeah, it's great to catch a fish on a lure that you go buy at Walmart or somewhere, mass produced. They work great, but imagine the excitement of making one or catching a fish on a lure that somebody handmade, or you handmade.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot to it when you look at it. I mean, you turn this shape on the lathe, it's cut out on the front, you add the hardware, you paint it, you know, take some skill to make it look good, and you work at that, and then take that out and actually catch a fish on something that you made. Just enhances the experience.
Yeah. Do you think people also are engaging in these activities as a means to, like connect with the past?
Oh yeah, yeah. If you like history, there's so much history, through the books like we were talking about, um, through the activity itself, through hunting, or through the traditions of making all these tools and things that go along with it. But there's lots of history about Arkansas early on from the hunting standpoint, where, and I can't remember the year, it's going to be early, probably 1700s. There was a German hunter explorer, Friedrich Gerstacker, and he has a book out on coming to Arkansas and this part of the country and hunting bear and turkey and deer and all kinds of things from way back there. So yeah, there's so much history to it. Just talking about Arkansas being the bear state. There's 2 cities in Arkansas named after bears or related to bears. You know what those are?
No, I didn't know I
So,
was going to get a pop quiz.
so one of them we actually kind of mispronounced now. So Bearden is actually Bear Den, because there were lots of bears in the area. And there's a town called Oil Trough, Arkansas, and that was a centralized place where they processed the bear fat to make oil for oil lamps.
Oh
Because
my
they were
gosh.
so abundant, it was an industry at the time.
Yeah. Well, and oil trough is just so tiny. Now, I mean, now
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I know, I like it there, but it's so small. That's so interesting. Wow. I love that history lesson. Okay, so we have another question in chat. How many out-of-state hunters come in on average each year, and do you have any idea of the economic impact they make on the state?
Not off the top of my head. I've seen those numbers. That's just not something that I deal with enough to commit to memory with all the other numbers I try and keep up with. It is significant. And then we have out-of-state hunters coming in for different reasons. We have a number of them that come in to duck hunt. Have some that come to deer hunt. A lot of people, I think, are coming with family or just because they have a place to hunt or they're part of a lease. We're not so much a destination like some places in Texas and other places that are known for or Kansas are known for really big bucks. But we do have some out-of-state hunters that come in. A lot of duck hunters though, because of the commercial aspect of it, and a lot of out-of-state anglers coming in primarily to trout fish in the northern part of the state, but some do come in, to crappie fish and bass fish and that stuff also.
Okay, so we're getting, close to 2 o'clock. So I want to move kind of away from the traditions and let you talk a little bit about the outdoor skills training program that's offered at regional nature centers. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got nature centers spread out all across the state. We have what we call the outdoor skills program, and we were doing classes on skills and stuff anyway. We have for 20 something years or more. And what we did is we adapted some of it to our outdoor skills program, and we have 10 areas that people can learn skills, and they earn a patch kind of show off their skill, and then they progress up through that. So we talked some about archery, and I've grabbed an archery patch here, and you can see it on the website. I know you've got a link to some of that. So if you go to the nature center and you take a basic archery class, then you can sign up and it's free. We just put you in the database and you get a patch showing you've taken a beginner archery class. And then it's lined out here for you. So to move up a level, there's different options. So you would shoot proficiently from 2 different distances, and it tells you 5 arrows in the red and what the targets and the distances. Or you participate in the National Archery in the Schools regional tournament, or you participate in an Arkansas Bowhunters Association 3D tournament, and then you move up to the intermediate level. So you'd have this patch, and then you'd get this one that goes under it. Says now you're an intermediate, and then you go to the next level, and it's all to encourage you to continue working on that skill. So you can take a basic fishing class from us. It could be general fishing, or it could be beginner crappie fishing. And so you finish the class, you show us that you can rig your own fishing pole, have that skill, and you get your beginner patch. And then to get to the intermediate level, you just have to go fishing twice on your own. And that doesn't mean you have to go all by yourself. It just means you don't get to take a game and fish person with you. We don't have to go witness. And it's all in the honor system. So once you go fishing twice, whether you catch anything or not, but you went, then we'll give you the intermediate patch. And to be advanced, that next level, you do have to catch something, you have to clean it, and you have to cook it.
Ooh.
So you work your way up. There's also, so you can work up through intermediate, advanced, expert. We also have a mentor patch. You do not have to be an expert to be a mentor. I always stress that. You don't have to be an expert. But once you get to that advanced level, so you've got a little experience, now it's time to go take somebody with you. Get them interested in fishing. Get them interested in hunting or game calling. We've got rifle and shotgun shooting. We've got paddle sports, or even just watchable wildlife and conservation. So get somebody else involved. There you're helping carry on the tradition, and you may get somebody that's going to be your hunting partner or your kayaking partner or somebody else to go out with.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like a really amazing program.
And it's free. All of our classes are free.
There is a link above. I'll share it again. That's a question in the chat. I want to share my screen while you answer this next question, just so that people can see that Outdoor Skills website, which explains a little bit of what you just said. I was really wanting people to be able to see the list. But so what is it that for you makes a responsible outdoorsman?
Well, having a better understanding of conservation and what all goes into it, and management, understanding that hunters and anglers, they contribute more dollars to wildlife conservation than any other group. So you can be a member of any number of conservation organizations, and there's lots of good ones out there, and they do good work. But dollar for dollar, I mean, hunters and anglers contribute more money through excise taxes and stuff on their equipment. So we're talking about guns and ammunition and archery equipment and all those kind of things. There are special taxes on that have been in place for decades that go back to wildlife management and conservation efforts and buying land that's open to the public, and those kind of things. So, understanding that hunters and anglers play such a big role in conservation. And then once those people are out, there's always exceptions to the rules, but the people who are out and they hunt and they are fishing and they're around the ponds and they're out in the fields and all that kind of stuff, they're more likely to take care of habitat and probably less likely to litter and throw stuff on the side of the roads and all that kind of thing because that's their area. There are a lot of people that drive up and down the roads. They never get out of their car out of town. So they can throw their trash out there on the side of the road because they don't ever interact with it. Where these people are out there and they see the trash in the streams and on the sides of the fields. And those people are the ones that go along and a lot of times are participating in stream cleanups and that kind of stuff also.
Yeah, that's really neat. I love that you made that connection between these traditions and stewardship of our state and our natural environment, which is just really important to the continuance of so many different traditions in our area, not just the ones you've mentioned. And I also really appreciate the connections that you've made to community and family and friends through these traditions, even though I haven't taken part really in hunting and fishing since I was a kid. What all those things that you said are so true. I have so many family members that engage in yearly hunting trips, yearly fishing trips, and look forward to them. My stepdad looks forward to his annual fishing trip for probably like a month beforehand, and it's just the sweetest thing. I just love it. I love his excitement. It's kind of contagious. So yeah, so I feel like we've had a good conversation. I wanted to just give you a chance if there was anything else that you didn't get to say or that you've thought of that you wanted to say.
Well, one thing I did want to clarify for you, I'm the assistant chief in education
Okay.
and not the chief. I'm over a lot of the nature centers and the outdoor skills program, and we have a decoy recycling program so that people won't throw away old plastic decoys and working on stuff like that. But yeah, the chief does a great job, but I don't want her job.
Well, apologies. I think
Uh,
that I just missed the word.
yeah, yeah. We've
I,
got a really good team in education. We work with the public. We work in the school districts. We work with homeschool groups. We do programming for Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and we'll come to your library or your church group or whatever. If you just ask us to come out and do presentations, we can teach skills. And anytime you go to one of our classes, either at a nature center or if it's a game and fish person doing it out, one of our educators out in the community, ask them about the skills program and get signed up. And there's some good opportunities online. Also, the last thing I'll touch on, because we do have a lot of people interested in learning outdoor skills. We have a lot of interest from women because through history, typically they were kind of left at home. You know, the men and the boys went and hunted and got a shotgun and a 22, and all the girls, for whatever reason, were left at home playing with the dolls or whatever. So we have a lot of moms, a lot of single women that want to get out and learn to hunt, learn to fish. There are classes that we offer through the Becoming an Outdoor Woman program. We run some Facebook pages called the Women Outdoor Network, where women can network and meet others that want to learn how to fish or hunt, or maybe they're going and they want somebody to go with them, go kayaking and stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities there for women who want to get in the outdoors and do more.
yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to give one more chance to our participants here. Does anybody have any questions? Somebody says, who would I reach out to in the Crawford County to arrange for programs?
Let's see, Crawford County over close to Fort Smith. Am I in the right place?
I should know, but I can look it up.
Yes. Okay. So the Nature Center in Fort Smith, the Arkansas River Valley Nature Center, If you will contact them, you can talk to them about programming in the area, or especially if you want somebody to come out to your facility, your class, or whatever. If you just want to know about classes all over the state, the best place to find out is online at register-ed.com. If you go to register-ed.com and you'll click on Arkansas, and then once you get to that page, it'll have outdoor skills programs, it'll have hunter education programs, and boater education programs. And the outdoor skills programs will list everything we've got on the calendar at the time, but it changes daily. They'll have fishing programs, how to duck call, nature crafts programs, all kinds of things.
Yeah, there is a lot of things listed here.
Depending on the time of the year. So sometime of the year, you'll find lots of paddling and canoeing classes. You won't find trapping classes. Right now, you'll find lots of trapping classes in the fall and winter. Not so many kayaking classes because people don't want to kayak when it's cold.
Right.
So there are some seasonal things. Fish camps. We have fish camps for kids, like a day camp or week-long camp. So there's all kinds of things. So it's worth checking back regularly.
Well, thank you so much. I put links to all of those places and things you mentioned into the chat. I really appreciate you being here. I've really enjoyed talking to you and the knowledge that you've shared. This is such an important and widespread tradition in Arkansas, so I'm happy to be able to highlight it today, especially as it gets into season. So, and our participants, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll see you all again in the future. Have a great day.
Thank you.